Do you hear me? You hear me? Okay, before introducing our panelists today, I'm Solomon Patient. I'll be your moderator for this this moment today. But before introducing our panelists, I would like to warmly thank the Foundation and Ambassador Alessandro Minuto Rizzo and Alessandro Puliti and their phenomenally skillful team, not big, but extremely efficient team, for inviting us. And as a person who is coming from the NGO sector, who is fundraising 24/7, I would like also to thank all the sponsors of this great event, starting, of course, with Nicola De Santis and the Public Diplomacy Division of NATO. A question that I would like to offer to be umbrella not only for the discussion today, but for the entire next year, the upcoming 2024, is the following. Aren't our regional cross-border disputes too small, too parochial, at the background of the big picture? And what is the big picture? The big picture, this is the evil against democracy. The big picture is between Russia and Ukraine. The big picture is between Hamas and Israel. The big picture is between North Korea and South Korea and the rest of the world. The big picture is between China and Taiwan. And since very recently, we saw that the big picture is between Venezuela and Guyana. We are expecting news from there. Having said that, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Ambassador Zoran Yolevski, who used to be Minister of Defense of North Macedonia. At that time, it was not North, it was another Macedonia. And ambassador to the United States, of course. He was, I happen to know him because we are from the same generation. I happen to know him when he was chief of cabinet of President Boris Trajkovski, one of the most bright minds we have ever had in the Balkan politics. With this couple of words, I will invite Ambassador Zoran Yolevski to take his 7 minutes.
Thank you, Solomon. If you allow me, I will speak. I used to be ambassador, but now I'm professor. And as a professor, we always stand when we talk. I would like also to express gratitude to NATO Foundation for inviting us to speak on this important topic. And I would like to share with you something which happened recently and could have positive impact to the Southeastern Europe, or how you call it, Western Balkans. If you probably you have noticed that exactly a month ago, the European Commission proposed economic growth plan for Western Balkans. It coincides with my work, what I did in 2021 and first half of 2022 at Harvard, and I work on a project called Enhancing Economic Integration of Southeastern Europe into European Economic Area. It's also, now we can say, single market. And sometimes friends, they ask me, okay, why are you doing that? The ultimate goal of all our countries is membership to Euro-Atlantic integration, full membership to NATO, which my country and many, Bulgaria, our neighbor, achieved, and Montenegro. And the second one is integration into European Union. When I was a young diplomat, when we proclaimed independence, I thought by mid-age we'll be members of those organizations. Later on, I moved the deadline. Then I said, okay, until my retirement, we might be members of EU and NATO. Now EU remains. And now I say, probably, I hope in my life, because life expectancy in my country is 74 and I'm 64. But my plan coincidence with partly with what Commission proposed has three major elements. One is integration of the region into the single market. The second one is putting the policies, economic policies of the Southeastern Europe in line with what the European Union are doing, Let's say we have European Green Deal, we have Digital Europe. Those are important for any country policies. And third element is impact investments from the EU companies in Southeastern Europe. European Commission, if you look at the economic level of development of the countries, we approximately, if we measure by GDP purchasing power parity, we about around 40% of average EU per capita. So it's huge gap. And European Commission, in addition to letting us to get into certain areas, certain sectors of single market, also proposed in the paper that we should work on a regional trade area where we'll use the standards of European Union in order to become part of the regional common market. That's an important element. And third one, to accelerate our fundamental reforms, which is very, very important. And also there is also some financial support to be achieved. If you ask me, the ultimate goal should be full membership to EU, but also from economic point of view, full membership to single market. We have given part of that, like if you look at, because we're in Italy, country where football is important, we wanted to be part of the team. They let us, okay, you will sit on a reserve bench, we will give you 15 minutes to play. And now we have to use next year to show that really we are ready for reforms in the economic sphere, because those are important for our economy also. We have some economic cooperation, but unfortunately it's not progressing as we would wish. It's a CEFTA market, and also we committed to to regional market, but still needs a lot of things to be done from our side. On the other side also, the second segment, what I mentioned, is the economic policies of the countries from the region to align with European Union economic policies. We know that European Green Deal and Digital Europe is not just about green economy or just for digitalization transformation, but making European economy more competitive. So now we have to, as a countries, align our programs, but also EU should find a way how to support that alignment of our policies with European Union. What instruments to open in order for our countries to be able to join benefits of those policies. And that will be important for all of us. And third element, you know that recently, last 20 years, for major governmental programs, always we rely on participation of the private sector. The impact investments who at the same time have goal to achieve a profit, but also to achieve some social goal, are important. And we need to have more European companies coming and investing in the region. Of course, there is a lot of opportunity. We need to do a lot of reforms to attract them, but they're already coming in the region. Just to give you one example, it was a German company which was making some coffee machines for Nespresso. They had 2 companies in Asia. They wanted to open third facility. We worked with them hard in 2016 and 17. They opened in my country, and they're extremely happy. They're opening now the second facility. So, they are close geographically to the region. Culturally, we are very similar. Same time zone. They don't need to wake up at 4 o'clock or stay until 10 in the evening in order to contact the affiliate somewhere else. So that is beneficial. Of course, that we need to have a mechanism of coordination between the companies, what are their needs, as well as countries. Also, there's huge potential from pension funds and institutional investors. But in order for them to invest in our region, we need to provide certain security, which is a legal framework which will help the investors to come more in the region. That's how I believe the region could move quicker towards our goal to join European Union as soon as possible. And I'm happy that also Bosnia will get a candidate status soon, and look forward to have other countries moving forward. Thank you very much.
I thank you. I thank you, Zoran. This is really impressive. Without having the clock in front of ourselves, you made it exactly 7 minutes. So if you want, you can, if all of the speakers have the same internal clock, you cannot switch it on. I'm telling this to our friends who are helping with the television. Next on our agenda is Victoria Nemerenko from Moldova. Victoria is a program coordinator of the leading NGO in Moldova, which is the Institute for European Policies and Reforms. Everybody needs reforms. And also member of the Council for Civic Coalition of Free and Fair Elections. Focuses on local development, European integration, good governance, elections, and influence of the media. You have the floor.
Thank you so much.
Victoria.
And thank you for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. I will try to briefly outline the situation of Moldova in 7 minutes that I have. So while Russia's invasion in Ukraine had enormous effects on Moldova's political stability, it still did not manage to cause irreparable damage. Nevertheless, the invasion marked a series of challenges for the Moldovan government, making it the second most affected state of this war. The security threats have seen an unprecedented increase, and as we progressed, we had to deal with the economic, energy, and security threats. The issue of the Transnistria and cybersecurity threats being among the main ones. First and foremost, I'd like to focus on the issue of Transnistria and most importantly, the issue of territorial integrity of the country. The presence of Russian peacekeeping forces in the region, coupled with the very strong separatist sentiment, creates a very complicated and delicate situation in the region. And since the war began, these tendencies became more accentuated. However, without direct indication from Russia in Transnistria, these forces cannot serve as a potential escalation of the situation on their own. And right now, we see that being as an improbable situation due to the Ukrainian army's resistance. But Moldova is constantly attacked informationally through propaganda and misinformation because Russia cannot they cannot reach us militarily. They try to invest money to influence the social media, but also the social networks with the troll factories. And they also invest money in criminal groups. As a response, certain measures were taken by our government, such as blocking the websites, suspending the licenses of TV channels, but also actions to prevent certain actors affiliated with Russia and supported by Russia from doing such activities as espionage. The Gagauzia Autonomous Territorial Unit is also an area with strong pro-Russian tendencies, and it is very far away from our national informational space. The security situation there is as volatile as it is in Transnistria, amid the developments in Ukraine, with the local population believing that Kiev and the Western states are to blame for the conflict. Moldova has been a target of the hybrid aggression launched by Russia, and energy was one of the tools used to put pressure on the government. Prior to war, Moldova was buying around 1/3 of its energy needed for consumption by the citizens from Ukraine, while the rest was coming from the Kuchurgan power plant in Transnistria. Due to the war and the reduction of the gas coming from Russia into the Transnistria, the said power plant could not produce the needed amounts of electricity, but also the suspension from the Ukrainian side of the electricity. We found ourselves in a very delicate situation. And this was mainly activated strictly with the aim of weakening the economy of Moldova, and with an intent to raise some social actions like protests. However, we managed to urgently connect ourselves to the European grid, also with the help of our Romanian allies. And thus, we managed to improve the energy resilience of the country. The international community is very attentive to all the developments going on in Moldova. And if prior to the war, the EU and NATO promoted a very pragmatic and in some places even cautious policy because of the Russia's interests in the region. With the beginning of war, we see more openness and support towards Moldova, Ukraine, but also Georgia. The EU has reconfirmed its support for Moldova by granting us the EU candidacy status in June of 2022. And we see NATO is also providing a lot of political and practical support. As a result of the Madrid summit, but also the Vilnius summit, we see a very tailored political and practical support, but also such declarations as support for our territorial integrity and sovereignty within the internationally recognized borders, and the call for Russia to withdraw its troops from Transnistria. The political support is also seen not only by the declarations, but also via the visits of high-ranking officials to Moldova. As we continue to work towards Euro-Atlantic integration, the NATO partnership serves as a catalyst for the modernization of armed forces and the alignment of our security institutions to the international standards. Also, questions about Moldova's capacities to withstand the aggression sparked even more questions about the neutrality status of the country. Constitutionally, Moldova, unlike Ukraine, is neutral, even though this status was rather imposed to us as an instrument of a foreign policy. And Russia is trying to exploit this neutrality by claiming that by being neutral, we are being more protected. The challenge here lies in actually explaining to the citizens what is this military neutrality, and in the context in which Russia openly asserts its militarism and utters direct threats to the Republic of Moldova. I can conclude with saying that we learned our lessons. We see all the developments going on at this point, and we started to strengthen ourselves institutionally by creating a Center for Combating Disinformation, but also a cybersecurity agency. We also updated our security strategy, and we are working to fight the disinformation more effectively. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Exactly 7 minutes, again without the clock. Tell me, Victoria, what is the definition of your neutrality?
Well,
are you supposed to be neutral if someone is occupying your territory?
According to our constitution, that is the goal. Nevertheless, as I previously mentioned, it is being promoted by Russia, and it was being promoted when the constitution was adopted, only because there were tendencies from the population to reunite with Romania. So our local population did not want to be part of a bigger country. They wanted their state on their own, which was also a narrative promoted by the USSR and following the Russia Federation. Right now, this neutrality status is a bit outdated, I would say, because we have a war at our borders, and we cannot continue to stay neutral militarily, even though we don't have the necessary capacity to to overcome this challenge. But we still need to be more, I'd say, more in I'm sorry, I forgot the word. More aligned with the European Union and with NATO when it comes to saying who is who. And
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So we have perspectives beyond the horizon. And our third panelist today is from Albania. This is Alba Cella, and she is the executive director of the Albanian Institute for International Studies and a member of the West Balkan Strategy Group of the Heinrich Böll Foundation. And she is also editor of the academic quarterly Tirana Observatory. Alba, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and first allow me to thank the organizers for inviting me to come back once again. I was for the first time last year, and it's a real pleasure to join the event. Also because I think I mentioned this last year as well, but it's still valid, we don't get many platforms or conferences in which we get to discuss both Balkans and Black Seas. Usually events, academic or policy, keep these regions quite separate, so it's very much welcome when we get to meet our colleagues and exchange views about common issues. And as we know, these common issues now are very much on the table. I'd like to try to address a question that is included in the description of our panel, which is how is the integration of our region progressing and what's the real perspective? First of all, for me, it's very important to underline that European integration for all the 6 Western Balkan countries is still, despite all the problems, all the skepticism, all the delays, which are all true, the only path forward which is being agreed by the countries, which in a way or another are in different steps of the way, but they have committed formally to this path of EU integration, and despite the rising skepticism in certain countries, by the public opinions. In my flight over here, I was listening to a podcast by a good friend of some of the organizers here, Mr. Ivan Vejvoda, who was here with us last year, and he describes that even in Serbia, which is considered as one of the countries with skeptical or non-favorable opinion, when you go beyond the surveys and into the focus groups, you understand that people would never go to live in Russia, but they would go to live, emigrate, and study still in the West. So let's consider these basic systematic factors: formal commitment of the governments and public opinion, which is still very much looking forward to the European path. Why I mention is that this is the only stabilizing process. In the first panel, we heard very true but a bit despairing pictures from Bosnia and from Kosovo, and it makes you think, what is the antidote to all these negative developments? There's only one: it's EU integration. There's no other plan. That's why it's important to see why the process is, what is going wrong with the process, that it is not acting as an antidote. And for me, it's the delays and the fact that this process has lost some of its credibility. So we are talking a lot in our region, but also in Brussels and in Berlin and in other places, about recognizing the credibility of the European integration process and the credibility of the relations between member states and candidate states. With this, I want to try to answer also your questions. Aren't our little fights too small for what is really going on? And of course they are. Let's consider these bilateral disputes, which are asymmetrical between member states and candidate states. And they sometimes take the process hostage. And colleague here, but also me from Albania, we feel this in our integration process many times. North Macedonia has done huge sacrifices and is still being held in the process of integration because of bilateral disputes. Albania has been a little bit more lucky because our bilateral disputes with Greece has not become at any point vetoes or obstacles, but they are there. They have the potential to become. So these bilateral issues are number one when we consider the credibility of the integration process. And it is the EU that needs to be more proactive in trying to find a way how it will deal with these bilateral processes, which may actually rise up in the future for other countries and for other states. Consider that we have to go through regatta principle in the Balkans, so everybody to its own merits. Then we have to find ways not to block each other once the first ones get in and the others are delayed. So that's why it's very important to have a strategy about bilateral problems. The second thing is, for the first, because of the war in Ukraine, because of the new momentum, which needs to translate into action. We talk a lot about momentum, but when it comes to the Western Balkans, with the exception of some symbolic moves, which were delayed actually, such as opening of negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia and candidate status for Bosnia, which were in the table for a long time. So they are not new strategic moves. They are delayed things that were pushed in the agenda because of the new context. Then we need to think about how the momentum will transform into action. We are seeing how it transforms for the other countries, for Ukraine, for Moldova, and maybe even Georgia. But for us, we need to still what is going to go on, starting from the next meeting of the EU Council. My final point is that the EU is right now starting to discuss its future. Some of you might have seen this Franco-German report of a group of 12 authors sailing on high seas, how to make the EU ready for enlargement. I think we have a more honest discussion now about the integration and the enlargement process, that the EU also needs to become ready. Certain dates have been launched, like 2030, but in this discussion of the EU's future, all the candidates should be included with an open and honest path. So this discussion needs to be common between those that are in the Union and those that are officially in the path to become members in the Union. Coming from Albania, I am in a bit more comfortable position from a country which is not so much under threat of disinformation, because the public is very staunchly pro-Western. So there are less access points to influence when it comes to Russian or Chinese influence. But what we are not immune from is general disappointment. And many people here mentioned the human brain drain, labor drain, care drain that we are experiencing. And this is going to become a huge problem for us. There is only one antidote to that, a real hope that we become EU member states. Because what these people are doing is that they are becoming EU citizens before their countries. They are voting with their feet. They are no longer waiting, so they are making a choice. But in doing that choice, they leave their countries deprived of huge potential, democratic potential, economic potential, and they become then huge crisis. So my call is for the EU to be much more strategic in thinking about the Western Balkans and much more clear. Credibility depends on clarity rather than on speed. Many times we say that we need a date, we need a date. Much more than a date, we need a credible engagement. I want to say that it's 20 years since Thessaloniki Forum when this promise was made for the first time. Think about what 20 years are for a human life. It's not a little time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alba. I was on the Thessaloniki summit participating there. Some time has passed, 20 years now. And I'm happy to see that a number of us remember this Thessaloniki summit. Well, speaking of the big picture, I would raise two questions to all of you, because the countries of the three of you would be affected if such a theoretical utopian solutions are on the table. Number one has four parts. To invite Moldova to join NATO, Moldova minus Transnistria. To invite Bosnia and Herzegovina to join NATO minus Republika Srpska. To invite Georgia to join NATO minus South Ossetia and Abkhazia. and to join Ukraine to join NATO minus the occupied territories. When I say minus, it means that we're not supposed to spread Article 5 over these occupied territories. We keep them frozen. And I'm sure that Nicola DeSantis will share this with the Secretary General. Nicola, I'm sure you're going to share this with the Secretary General and with the North Atlantic Council, these very bold proposals. We want to invite all these countries to NATO. Bosnia and Herzegovina minus Republika Srpska, Ukraine minus the occupied territories, Georgia minus South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and Moldova minus Transnistria, which means the Article 5 will not be spread over the occupied territories. We shall think about the occupied territories later. Let us have these countries in NATO now. Now, this was the division of the motto of the Atlantic Club 33 years ago when we started. We wanted to get out of the Warsaw Pact and join NATO. And our motto was membership in Bulgaria in NATO now. Now. Not someday, but now. And decision number 2 of the European Union, sovereign decision, that we're not going to invite new members to the European Union if they're not members of NATO. This is something which would very much help the security of the region and will very much help stop the infiltration of Russia. Because if there is someone who can infiltrate the European Union from outside, this is a country like, with all my due respect, like Serbia, where they have Russian spy center in Niš. And this will be a direct penetration of the European Union if we have such a country inside the EU. So tell me, how do you see the future of your countries under these two hypothetical circumstances?
Well,
Who should start?
yes, you should name who is
Okay, let's start from Moldova.
Well, in regards to the first question, it's a very interesting proposal indeed. However, I believe if we were to separate the territory of Moldova and leave Transnistria outside of the NATO, it would actually mean that we recognize that Moldova is a separate entity without Transnistria, and that the international community as well does not recognize its internationally recognized borders, claiming that Transnistria is an entity of its own. The same goes to Georgia with Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and the same goes to other countries. That means an invitation for us to invite Russian authorities, Russian troops, whatever, into those regions for them to govern them. It could potentially pose an even greater risk if they were so close to our NATO territory, NATO member territory. Following that, if I would refer to a recent opinion poll that we had in Moldova in June of this year, according to that, around 28% of Moldovans would support the NATO integration, and the 60% of the citizens do not support it. That is a bit of a different situation when it comes to the support for the European Union, when around 60% of Moldovans support the EU integration of the country. Moldova is not yet ready to be part of NATO, and we don't see it as being quite ready in the near future. In the polls over the last 10 years, of course, the support has grown, but it never went above 30% of support. So we would still be interested in becoming the EU member states with all of the defense mechanisms that the EU provides. However, we would still like to benefit from the continuous training offered by NATO, continuous support, because becoming members of NATO right now would be a very tricky political and a risk for the country.
Thank you. Thank you. Alba.
Well, you said this is a utopia, but that might be turned into a dystopia. I was in a panel this week with, first time in my life, moderating some generals and members of army from NATO, from UK and US, and the audience were young people, and all the young people were asking, NATO enlargement, new countries into NATO. And I was very struck by what they said. NATO has open door policy, and it is based on the will of members and countries which wish to join to express the desire to do the reforms, but we should also think what makes the alliance stronger. So enlargement, yes, but with the condition to make the alliance stronger. So I think that in this regard, I think this is the best choice, to keep the open door policy, but in such a way that doesn't make the alliance vulnerable to things which are unpredictable. When I think about what you said, EU, but only with countries that are NATO member states, I'm very torn here, because coming from Albania, that would be fine for us. But do we really want a vacuum in the Balkans? Do we really want, for example, Serbia, which is the largest country in our region, which has considerable influence on other countries, do we really want to isolate this country forever, saying that unless you make this choice to enter NATO, then you have no hope of EU integration? I think it's a delicate balance of punishing actions and isolating in such a way that you don't leave any door for discussion. And for me, when I envision a good future of the region of the Western Balkan, I see it with all the 6 countries within, not with anyone exempt. Yes, it might be difficult to go there, and right now some things look very depressing and some positions look very, very negative, and that is the position of Serbia towards the Russian aggression, of course. But in the long term, I think there is value in keeping doors of communication open. And NATO has, for example, a communication and cooperation with Serbia. And they value that because it keeps the door open to at least having a channel of communication when that's needed, and that is needed many, many more times than we think it is.
Thank you, Zoran.
Thank you. I will start from the basic premises that, and always I have said when people ask me about Ukraine, no one has right from outside to tell to Ukrainian people where they belong and where they want, which alliance they want to join. So the answer is that the countries, what you mentioned, they should make decision if they want to join NATO in any format.
They want?
I'm not to answer that. They know what they want. For me, is we have to let, if the country would like to join NATO, should be allowed to join NATO. No one has right to prevent that. That's the first premises. Secondly, I believe what Ukraine is doing, they are not just fighting for themselves, but for democracy in Europe. They are fighting for all of us. And it's important to support them as much as possible. On the question of EU accession or membership of Serbia to EU, I have been, I go from time to time to Serbia to speak. I spoke, let's say, I spoke with the Norwegian ambassador. Norway asked me about 2 or 3 years to go to Belgrade. It was a NATO day in Belgrade. It was in their biggest governmental palace of Serbia. We had the leadership of Serbia. We had a military leadership. Some of us spoke about the importance of NATO, and you know, we have to keep that dialogue. But are they prepared? Should we push them? I'm not sure that that's a good approach. But their integration towards EU will also help the other process, security integration, how to say, into NATO structures. As my Albanian colleague mentioned, you know, for us it's very important that whole region is part of European Union, and also those countries who would like to join NATO, they should be free to do that. I will just mention one thing about Bosnia and Herzegovina. I remember it was 2009. I was in that time ambassador in Washington, and together with Croatian ambassador, later she became a president, Kolinda Grabarovic-Kiter, and as well with Roman Krin, Slovenian ambassador, we had a meeting with working breakfast with Senator Shahin. She is Democrat and in charge for the region, let's say, follows the region in the US Senate, and Senator Vojnovic, who was born in Slovenia, some Croat and Serbian descent. So it's just, and we asked them that, I speak about 2009, that Bosnia and Herzegovina should get membership action plan. They fully agreed with us, and they called Secretary Clinton. They told us, and she had a positive report, but on a NATO summit, Bosnia got conditional, how to say, membership action plan. I believe that if we gave them full membership action plan at that time, would have been much, it would have a positive impact to Bosnia and Herzegovina, because the army is the only institution which functions on the whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. When I was Minister of Defense, I was in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I saw that the escort cards are changing. And I was staying in the same part. And I said, what's going on? They said, in each entity, there is different police, and only the army has a right to the whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And as a takeaway on this topic, I would leave a food for thought that in the past, Germany was divided between the Warsaw Pact and NATO, and no one said to Germany, to West Germany, you are not going to join NATO because this will separate you from German Democratic Republic. And also we had, in the same way, Cyprus joining the European Union, expecting Tajani then to help us to unite the island. So, and also, South Korea does not expect North Korea to get mature, but is flourishing and going ahead with her international integration. So this is something that I would like to leave as a food for thought from the beginning of this discussion. And now I'll be very happy to call the audience, starting with the Norwegian ambassador. Olaf, welcome. The NATO Contact Point Embassy in Sarajevo.
Many thanks. And to the moderator, this is a bold proposal. But then again, I certainly believe that the so-called Western Balkans need bold initiatives. When it comes to NATO membership for the Federation of BIH, letting RS outside, it won't fly, of several reasons. And unfortunately, I am this, diplomat who can say that, it won't fly. It was a question during my presentation about the Dayton. We need to do something with Dayton. But my answer is, yes, I agree, but it won't fly. I always say that nothing will fly, but that to see and try that BIH should be divided into that is more or less a confirmation by NATO that Bosnia-Herzegovina, we confirm the division. So that is why it will not fly. When it comes to, it was an interesting conversation in session 2. I don't know if there are anyone from that panel, but it was about malign influence. We had the Norwegian embassy, we recently had a survey 3 weeks ago about malign influence in Bosnia-Herzegovina. In Republika Srpska, among the Serbs, 82%, they say that malign influence is spread by United States, UK, and the European Union. That is, so what is malign influence? Also interesting was that whereas you say the support of European Union in Albania is skyrocketing, it is certainly not skyrocketing in BIH. It's going down both in the Federation and in Republika Srpska. Actually, NATO membership and NATO is more popular than European Union in the Federation. And believe it or not, and that was the encouragement, 1/3 of the Serbs, they would like to see RS and BIH as a member of NATO. Also very promising. But when you talk about Berlin influence, Russia, etc., unfortunately, they are very much succeeding, and we have to be fully aware. My question would be to the representative from Chisinau, Moldova. NATO has defined Georgia, Moldova, and BIH as the three so-called vulnerable countries in light of the new geopolitical situation and Russian aggression. What they have agreed upon, they started in Madrid, was this Defense Capacity Building Program, DCB. What is the perception in Moldova about that DCB? This is a concrete, solid initiative by NATO, practical support, defense and security. That would be my question. Thanks.
Thank you. That's true that the DCB initiative, which was approved, strived for a modernization of the security and the defense sector in Moldova. While our authorities very much appreciate it, the citizens are very unaware of in general, of the work of NATO in Moldova, and especially of the DCB package. To answer that, it is important for our institutions, especially the security-related institutions, to become more modern, more able to be resilient in these times, and to be in line with those international standards when it comes to human management resources, when it comes to strategic communication with the population. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions or remarks from the audience? Please. Please identify yourselves.
Thank you. Sandra Di Tanna, ex-FAO. I have a reflection. We speak about people of the Balkan and Black Sea wanting or not wanting to be admitted in the European Community or in the NATO. I am under the impression that we are not doing enough to communicate with them in a language that they may easily understand. Because I personally have acquaintances from Moldova, from Bulgaria. They all speak currently Russian, or at least they understand it well. I wonder how many understand English or another language, and whether we do something to translate and communicate in their language so that they may reflect and take accordingly decision. Thank you.
This is a question to whom?
Reflection rather than a question,
okay.
really, because it applies to all of us, I believe.
Okay, because I would suggest that in Bulgaria they speak more Russian than in Albania.
Yeah.
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 I'm Dragana Broz. I am teaching at university in Rome, and I would give a bit of a reflection and a question. I perfectly agree with our colleague from Albania. There is a lot of talking about European Union, but not in a way that people really, let's say, at the mass media can perceive correctly. Perfectly agree with the fact that if you ask anybody who is fostering eventually Russian politics and policies, that wouldn't ever go to work or study in Russia, but they would rather go either in New York or London or any European country. So the young people and the globalization worked a lot in fostering modernization, digitalization, new technologies that definitely are not coming from Eastern world, but are coming from Western world. However, my question would be what we can do at the institutional and official media, starting from the country where we are today, on to give better image of our world, of Western world, of the values, principles, and correct image of our world. Where are the positive that can attract from young people? I'm working with students. Also, a lot of my students are aiming at Western world, going, not Western world, but going out from Italy to better opportunity. So the better opportunity that are seen from Balkans are not anything unknown also in this country. So I think that we have to review, and I would ask maybe our ambassador, NATO ambassador, Norwegian NATO ambassador, what does he think, how we can work officially in order to give better image of our world.
Okay, I see that we have two from the panel who want to answer, and the Norwegian ambassador in Sarajevo is also preparing himself.
I have just a very short suggestion, which we group from civil society from different countries have. We are in constant communication with the EU for them to improve their strategic communication in all the region with two ways. First, to improve the communication from each EU delegation office present in the capitals. This includes political messaging, but this also includes the second part, the promotion in a smart but honest and open way of all the assistance that comes from the European Union to the countries, which has been undervalued for so long. All the funds, the technical assistance, in many, many different fields. For many of our countries, EU is the key donor, even for Serbia, is the key donor for all the reforms, for building infrastructure. So this needs to be promoted better, in a smarter way, with young audiences, with all the audiences. External Action Service has also a strategic task force about communication in the Balkans. Their part is mostly fighting disinformation, so sort of addressing the negative part of communication. They could also consider to do parallel tracks, also promoting the positive narrative. So these are my suggestions for the EU side, let's say, for Brussels, if I can make it like that.
Zoran.
Okay. I fully agree with my Albanian colleague, what she said, but I will add few things. Just to give you an idea, I spoke about the European growth plan presented a month ago. And I come this morning from Brussels. Private businesses who will be affected by this plan in Brussels were not that much informed about the plan, how things are going on. Same goes with private businesses in our region. So definitely we need to have that communication open, and to have, at the same time, when you have open communication, you have people, they are getting the ownership of the activities, what we are doing. And I believe that we have to have both ownership, we from the region, but Europe also. I will also mention one thing, which is we have to grab the moment, not just geopolitical situation, but because of geopolitical situation, for first time last year, 6 out of 7 citizens of Europe supported EU enlargement process with Western Balkans. It was 10 percentage points increase. And it's staying more or less the same. Now it's 54%, but still it's huge support. We need to use, because all politicians care about what their voters are thinking. We have to be open. On the languages, in some countries they speak more because of the history, but now the young generations, they speak mainly English. In my country, very few people speak Russian. Russia never had influence in my country. 95% of the young people, they speak English, and we started from first grade to speak English. And it's important that we communicate, I will go back with our citizens, what are the perspectives and what we are getting, and what I say, the reforms are not for EU, reforms are for us. We to have better life from the region.
Thank you, Zoran. Professor Bross, I like very much your question, and I would like to give you my answer, because in my organization we are working now something like 33 years fighting Russian propaganda. The solution based on our experience is the following. NATO should keep Article 5 permanently invoked vis-a-vis Russian propaganda. Permanently invoked, and we need a strategic command fighting Russian propaganda. Not only Stratcoms, we need huge resources. Russia is investing something $1 billion per year to sell their messages to Bulgaria. Something like between 800 and 1,000 false news, fake news, are coming to Bulgaria every single day. And Alba, never mind how many NGOs you engage in this, you cannot have so many NGOs to fight with $1 billion a year. We need something that we call under our, in our narrative, de-brainwashing program, which to be conducted from NATO as an intergovernmental effort, highly professional, working on a daily basis. This is because why I say Article 5 permanently invoked. Article 5 says if one country is attacked, everybody is attacked. But it does not say attacked by what. It does not say attacked by bullets, by nuclear weapons, attacked by what. We're attacked on a daily basis by words. And the word is a very cheap weapon, and one word can kill many more people than one bullet. With one bullet you can kill two, three people max. With one word, shouting in the theater, fire, 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 everybody runs away, and the crowd stamped over 100 people. 3 words kill 100 people right away. So this is what we need, and we as NGOs with the foundation, NATO Defense College Foundation, and a number of other important NGOs represented here, can be of a great support, but we cannot be the leaders of the war with the Kremlin. Yes, Professor.
Just one sentence. I'm coming from the country that used to be Yugoslavia. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, and I will die.
Why, unfortunately?
I will die Yugoslav. I'm almost your age, so you can understand me. However, in our country, while I was there, and I'm not there already more than 30 years, most of us were speaking French, English, Italian. Very little amount at that time was speaking Russian, and anti-Russian propaganda was very strong, and most of us, 400,000 intellectuals, left Belgrade and Yugoslavia in the Western world. So I think that tells a lot.
Yes, and I remember, thankfully, the role of your country for Bulgarians who defected to the West. they were usually, they had an intermediate campus in Belgrade, and as far as I remember, the street was Knyaz Mihailovic. Am I right?
There's Mikhail.
I sent a number of my friends through this camp going to the west. So we have now Olaf, the Norwegian ambassador, who is something like a star today because he has so many questions addressed to him as no one else in the room. Olaf.
I don't believe that the question is about more money to the region. It is more than enough money. At my panel, we also discussed the issue of connectivity. Transport, energy, environment. Without European Union, there wouldn't be any kind of connectivity currently in the Western Balkans. 80% of the total accumulated GDP of the so-called Western Balkans is either donations or European investments. In your country, the biggest is the Norwegian Statkraft. So it's not about money. And Russia is not investing anything. Absolutely nothing. And still Russia is, by the Russian or the Serbian population, they are seen and perceived as the savior. So it is not about the money, really. And the new growth plan of the European Union, I really do not believe that this will make any change. However, what I do believe, and I fully agree, in our strategic communication, we have to ask ourselves, are we honest? Are we really honest? You raised that question. My answer is, again, not being a member of the European Union, but it is no, we are not honest. How long did we keep North Macedonia in the cold? Well, we all know. It was embarrassing.
It's still in the cold.
It is still embarrassing. But having said that, when it comes to NATO, we also, in our strategic communication, we have to be honest. Then we can achieve what we want, namely, because we a more understanding of what we believe is our humble ambitions and objectives for this region. Safe and secure environment, democracy, rule of law, human rights, and eventually economic prosperity that can actually make young people stay in this region and not go to the European Union and Norway. This is the challenges right now. This is why, this region is no longer 20 million people. It is 17.5, the so-called Western Balkans region. So honesty in our strategic communication. I fully agree.
I understand what you're telling us, Ambassador, because Bulgaria was 30 years ago 9 million, today we're 6 million. I understand what we're talking about. Dear colleagues, dear friends, our great conference is close to an end. If there is no other urgent question, I see there is one.
Yes. Does it work? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm raising more a question than a consideration than a question. My experience has brought me to raise expectations.
30 seconds, please, 30 seconds, because...
Aren't we, as European Union agents, raising too many expectations among the candidate countries? Are we prepared to satisfy the expectations of this country? What are we doing?
Thank you. Thank you. This is a question that we shall discuss in the couloirs. And now I'm pleased to give thankfully the word to our president, the president of the NATO Defense College Foundation, Ambassador Alessandro Minuto Rizzo. Alessandro, you have the floor.
also to take the floor to comment on your remarks, which are, as usual, very relevant and very interesting. And what I find a little bit outside the main track, which is the most interesting part of that. So congratulations to you. It's been a great discussion. Thank you very much. So I think we can all make an applause to this panel, to this great panel. And now we are almost at the end of the conference, but the closing remarks will be made by the Honorable Giulio Tremonti. Giulio Tremonti is a very distinguished Italian politician. He's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Deputies. He could not be here today, but he is so kind and also attached to the issues that we are discussing that he will speak to us from his, I think, his residence. I'm not sure about that. I see his residence in the Alps. Onorevole Tremonti, siamo molto lieti di dare la parola a lei.
Thank you for this invitation. My presence is virtual. My speech, I hope, could be just a little more than virtual. Let me start speaking of an old book. The title is Europe 33. 33 was the year of the book. 33 is the medical technique for listening to the lungs. Say 33. The sick man at that time was Europe, shaken by terrifying jolts. The author of the book was Georges Simenon. At that time, before becoming a thriller writer, he was a reporter for big European newspapers, reporting from the Baltic area to the Black Sea. Today, in a different way, we are turning back in the same places where history is inevitable. What is past is probable, is Shakespeare Tempest Act 2. So, until yesterday, the political geography of Europe was visible on two parallel lines. The first one was pan-European or continental, the ancestral idea of Europe from the Atlantic to the Urals. The second one was internal to the first, was visible in the progressive integration between Germany and Russia, organized on the basis of the gas stream network and an economic system based on import of low-cost energy from Russia and export to China of high-priced products. Putin's war has dramatically interrupted this structure. The war today is not only a turning point in our history. In addition, today Europe is facing the crisis of globalization in a new, fragmented, and furious world. In this geopolitical scenario, which is the future of Europe, Europe great again. This is the copyright of Prime Minister Morawiecki in his speech in Heidelberg University. Anyway, great Europe again requires a new European political machinery with a new political software and with a new constitutional hardware. New problems cannot be solved by old means indeed. A new political software today in Brussels is dominant a dogmatic idea of democracy. As an effect, Europe is divided into two parts. One which is supposed to be totally democratic, the other one which is considered not enough. European Union cannot be based on this artificial separation between modernity and traditions, between elite and people. Where you don't know the past, you lose the future, especially when in so many parts of Europe, memory is memory of sufferings. Traditions. Let me quote Churchill, "A love for tradition has never weakened a nation. Indeed, it has strengthened nations in their hour of peril." Do you really think that the European Union, founded by great men, can be led by technicians? Following the list, Europe is losing its soul, drowned in the liquid of finance. It cannot be so. The old European tried, liberté, égalité, fraternité, is better than the last tried, globalité, marché, monnaie. Looking to the Danube River, Pope Francis, in his speech held at Budapest University, spoke of bridges as a symbol of the necessary union of European cultures. Putin destroyed any bridge. Inside Europe, we must do the opposite. In addition, today, I see the risks of the postmodern fluid doctrines, forgetting family and nativity, imposing to everybody a new, neutral and artificial European identity, so producing dramatic social effects. Today, our demographic curves are really dramatic. In a very short time, no cradles, no welfare state, and as a consequence, no public health, no pensions. This is not relevant for a few people. This is a regressive tragedy for the masses of poor people, and consequently, it's a tragedy for you. No democracy without demography. A new political hardware. A new European constitutional architecture is absolutely necessary today in the season of the new enlargement, from Ukraine to the Balkans to other countries. Flashback. In 2003, in the program of the Italian European semester, I remember the proposal to issue Eurobond for financing European infrastructures and military industry. I remember, at that time I was secretary, I remember at that time the reaction to this proposal was negative. The orthodox reaction was purely financial. No more public debt, even if European. The British reaction was very political and more intelligent. This could be, I remember, the Chancellor Checker, his phrase was, this could be nation building. No thanks. Yes, it was. Now, 2 decades after, we have European debt, and we are inside a war. During the other war, in December 1941, in the Manifesto di Ventotene, and European foreign policy and European defense were defined as essential for building of Europe. Time has come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Giulio, for your remarks. I'm very glad that you had the time to speak to us at the end of this long afternoon where we've been discussing so many complicated issues. We've not solved all of them, but we are partially on the good side of the road. Thank you very much. Buonasera. We are now at the end, I think the real end of the conference. And I come out of this long afternoon with a lot of questions, in fact. Perhaps it's your fault, I don't know. But a lot of questions because for the next conference that you may organize, or Zoltan perhaps, in Skopje, or because we are discussing, in fact, about enlargement, which is, of course, a good thing to discuss. But are we thinking about how this organization will work when it be enlarged? No, this is for the next time. Huh? I have some ideas about that. When I joined NATO, there were 19 members. Now it's 32. The European Union, when I was a young diplomat, was 7 or 6, I don't remember, or 8. Now it's 27 or something like that. I speak under the control of people here. So, we have and then also the relationship we discuss about NATO and European Union, the narrative, what there is behind the narrative, the real state of affairs. It's extremely interesting and very substantial issues, very substantial issues. And also the problem of enlargement itself, and the ambassador of Norway has spoken at length about that. He will be on this side the next time we'll invite him for a conference. There have been two school of thoughts, somebody saying it is necessary to enlarge immediately because people have lost their passions, they're talking about enlargement and it doesn't happen. Other people who say, yes, true, but they have to prepare better. So there we are. There we are, in the middle of life, as always, with a lot of problems to be solved. But this is our life. It's real life, so we cannot think that it is easier than that. I wish to thank you personally and the public. It is long to stay here from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock. I know that. And the fact that there are so many people in the room shows that the conversation is really interesting, and the subjects should be really the subject that should be continued. I'm serious about that, because they are very important and very substantial. This is not formalities. We are discussing about the future of Europe. So, anyway, thank you very much. Buonasera e grazie a tutti.